up and into the pesky pole. And that's going to go down the line. That one looks like it'll stay fair. And goodbye, home run. The pesky pole.
The 2-2. Swinging a fly ball deep down the right field line, slicing by the pesky pole. And that ball hits the pesky pole, which means it's going a home run.
3-2 high fly down the right field line, slicing toward the pesky pole into the corner, and that ball is gone. A green can. Now with a high fly down the right field line, headed toward the pesky pole. Is he going to tuck it inside? Indeed he does. That is gone.
Welcome to another episode of the Pesky Podcast. I'm your host, The Rit. With me, I have an all-star panel today. I have, of course, the OG, my head writer, George Sutherland. George, what's going on?
Not much, man. Just eager to do this and see some real baseball. I guess at the end of the day, but.
And then we have returning one of our writers, Rylie. How you doing?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Not too bad. We have returning the man, the co-host of ITM, Mr. Joey Capponi.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me back again, guys.
Dude, you are welcome anytime that you can get a free minute. Whenever Steve's not doesn't have you handcuffed.
Yeah, those moments are few and far between. Honestly, now probably more than the past few months. Gained some freedom from this team.
I gotta sit there and say I love the going live at what was it, Friendlies?
Oh yeah, Friendlies for Kike.
So that there was quite an adventure.
Sure was.
And making his pesky debut, Chris Henrique.
You got it.
There we go.
What's going on?
So not too bad, man. Thanks for coming on. DC will be on in a little bit. So let's sit there and talk. We got an end of the season player grade show going on here. This is gonna be crazy, because it's a season that a lot of us want to just forget. So it started off really hot, really good. We had some great memories with Adam Duvall, early. But man, the season isn't what it should have been. So let's start with you, George. What was your end result and thought of the 2023 Red Sox?
Hope in the beginning and just utter disappointment at the end. It looked like for a while they were going to get it together, particularly in July when they started putting it together. But their flaws caught up to them. You can't go with two openers, in a five-man rotation and expect to be strong. And they eventually ran out of gas. The bright spot was you got a chance to see a couple of the younger guys come up and get a glimpse of what they'll probably be. But disappointment. I guess not unexpected. I guess if you took a look back, I think we're all kind of hoping for the best in the beginning, but it soon became apparent that defense was not going to be their strong suit, and that and some poor pitching kind of undid them throughout the season.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. The defense and the pitching was abysmal throughout the whole season. So Rylie, what were your final thoughts on the 2023 Red Sox?
Yeah, so toward the end, I could definitely tell that they weren't gonna go anywhere, really. I could tell it was gonna be a disappointing end to the season. Kind of same as George. I had some optimism in the beginning of the season, particularly the first half, because, so last year I was writing about the Phillies for work. I was following them closely, and also I like the Phillies in general. So I was kind of able to see the similarities between where the Phillies were last year compared to where the Red Sox are this year. Their stats were pretty much parallel to one another. The Phillies had an insane offense last year, but their defense was, not that great. And they still made it to the World Series. And I was thinking the Red Sox, I mean, it wasn't guaranteed, of course, that they were going to be following the same path. But the Red Sox were pretty similar in the sense that they had one of the best offenses in the league. It was above average. And the thing with offense is like, yeah, you want a good defense, but if you can have a great offense that's going to basically like let's say you're just cranking out home runs, those aren't playable balls. You could have the worst defense in the world, but if you rack up enough runs, it can still make up for the fact that you have a bad defense and you can still win games that way. And so I was kind of comparing like apples to oranges in a sense, looking at that. But then as the season went on and the offense just wasn't cranking out like it could have been, I wasn't going to say should have been because, you never know. But they had a lot more potential, and I think they just were I think they're still kind of finding their rhythm. They have a talented team, but it's a lot of younger core players that, are still breaking out. Like if you look at Casas, he didn't do great in the beginning of the season, but then toward the end, he was just super explosive. So I still have a little bit of optimism for him where, yeah, I was a little disappointed that they didn't do great or as well as they could have, but I'm still pretty optimistic about them in the future.
Yeah, I think the next upcoming seasons are going to be really, really ones for us to watch as long as we can get some starting pitching, which I think is what we really need. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I had optimism around the deadline. I think pretty much everybody did, and then they kind of pulled the rug out from underneath us by not going out and making a move. And I know that it's hindsight now to kind of say, well, they should have traded or whatever, but they were in striking distance and you had an opportunity to at least remain competitive for the rest of the way. I'll be honest, I thought that the last, 20, 25 games where they basically waved the white flag and they gave up, that really put a sour taste in my mouth. Not even just set aside like being, I guess, a fan sometimes, but even just like covering the team. I really had a hard time with the fact that these guys just mailed it in. And that's exactly what it was. You know what I mean? So, but I feel pretty optimistic for this offseason because this team needs to make a splash. And I think that they're going to. And I don't think they're going to make a splash in the terms of doing something for the sake of actually doing something. I think that they need to go and show that they're the Red Sox again. Plenty of names out there to go ahead and do that this winter. But as for the overall this past season, I felt pretty good about them around the deadline time because I really thought that they were gonna do stuff, and then they didn't, and they ran out of gas. I think both of you have already said that the pitching couldn't sustain it. You know what I mean? 2 openers isn't going to cut it. So hopefully they can right this ship and we can go into next season and we can get a little more of that stability and sustainability that we've been told we were going to get for a handful of years. And we don't have to go through, a 2020 season and a 2022 and a 2023 any longer.
Yeah, it kind of disappointed me towards the end when, you had, like you said, Chris, people giving up, throwing the white flag. And then you see people like Justin Turner out there who's played hurt for how long, just continuously going out there and doing what they pay him to do, game in and game out. It's like, why is he putting his body on the line when the whole team, felt like it was giving up throughout the last 3-4 weeks?
It might also get a little bitter too because I had 78.5. I took the over, and obviously that didn't hit. So, they hit the 78 right on the dot. So I was a little bitter about that, but I've since let that go. I've paid my due, and yeah, that's I don't know. It's when you guys were asking like before, like what was worse, like 2020 or 2023. 2020, I don't really. That's like an afterthought. This season, I don't know. There's something about this year just kind of really didn't sit with me. So I'm really hoping that 2024 and beyond will kind of, we can put that in the past and move forward.
Yeah. Joey, what about you?
I had so much less fun than I was told I was gonna. I was led to believe I was going to have a much better year, as were some players. I mean, I think back to Kike getting his extension, which is funny now in hindsight that was major news of last offseason, but it was that Kike was coming back 1 year, 10 mil, And he openly said something that he probably shouldn't have and was probably told to not say. And that was, Chaim told me we're going to be a much better team next year. They weren't. And Kenley Jansen is grabbing a microphone every opportunity that he gets right now and letting everybody know, hey, I agreed to come here because I was told that this was going to be a competitive team. And that's not what happened either. So I have to believe that the guys on this team feel a similar way to we do. That is disappointment and also kind of shock at the way things played out. And Chris, to what you were saying about the deadline and it might being some hindsight now, I don't even think that is hindsight, man. I think there were so many people at the deadline saying, like, now's the time, you got to push. You didn't do it last year. You were 2 games out in 2022 at the deadline and you did nothing. So we can't do the same thing again. And I had a looming fear, as a lot of people did. This isn't I'm not patting myself on the back that I saw this coming, because it didn't take a soothsayer to know that it probably wasn't going to be a very loud trade deadline. And it wasn't. And then after that, it was miserable. So I think this year in our rearview mirror will look like the most obvious bridge year of all time, but we weren't told that. And I think that's what's really frustrating. We weren't told wait and see. We were told wait and see, and we're going to make a competitive team right now. That was Chaim's mantra over and over again, was build for the future while also competing. You didn't compete. You just didn't. And I understand that's like an impossible job, and I'm not trying to rag on Chaim, but it's just not the case. It's not what happened. And looking back, there's going to be names like Justin Turner, Adam Duvall, Corey Kluber would be a great trivia question a couple of years from now, of guys who were here for a little bit and then disappeared before this new core emerges and whatever. And it'll look like, a coming out party for Casas and Yoshida and Bayo, solidifying himself as a major leaguer. But looking back on this year, I think it's going to be one that we want to forget.
Even to jump in really quick, when it, like with the deadline too, typically in years past, there's always been some sort of chatter where anybody, would have at least something on what the team was going to do. And there was really nothing. I mean, now that there's stuff, I want to say like 3 days after the deadline, the thing that I put out with like Verdugo and Clark Schmidt, I was told, but like, I didn't want to put it out. I was also asked not to put it out. So like, I kind of was respecting, what I was being told. But once Bloom was pretty much let go, and I think this is like a misnomer, because a lot of people are going on social media and they're like, oh, the Red Sox they're slandering Chaim Bloom. I think that's the furthest from the case. That's the absolute furthest from the case. There are more people talking that are not with the Red Sox organization, and there are more people talking that are little lieutenants of Bloom that were not on the same page with Chaim Bloom in some respect, that are starting to like open up that door a little bit and kind of, but I don't look at that as being slander. I look at that as them saying like, hey, these are,
he shot himself in the foot.
But these are things that they were legitimately talking about and they legitimately thought were going to happen, or they thought had some legs to make this team better. And for whatever reason, it just never went down. Look, do I think like Verdugo for Schmidt would have made sense? Probably not. I'm not really big on Clark Schmidt, but like Dylan Cease made sense and they talked about it. You know what I mean? So why didn't it happen? Who stopped that ultimately? You know what I mean? And I think that's where we may not find that out. We may not find out exactly why the Red Sox didn't go and pull a trigger on a deal like that the Tuesday before the deadline, when they probably could have done that, which is ultimately, frustrating. Do we want to try to keep the kids and see what happens? Is Chris Sale really going to come through this time? Because it never actually has happened. Like, those are the things that I think that we have a right to second guess, but I don't really think that there's been any sort of slander. I don't think I think that that's just overreaction from people who are like, pro Bloom or whatever. I'm kind of in the middle on it. He was good to me, during my time, when I got to be around him and the team. But I told him one time in like Worcester, I'm like, dude, you got to like do something. Like, what are we waiting on here? And he just kind of like looked at me and smirked, but
that's the thing with the whole Bloom conversation, is it's not black or white. It is a gray area. And that's just not how social media works. And also just not how sports fans want to exist. They want villains and they want heroes, and that's it. They want the good guys, the bad guys. Who do I root for? And the story around Chaim Bloom is a really great one. It's kind of an anti-hero story where he was given an impossible task. He was made to do some of the hardest things that any GM, CBO, whatever you want to call him, has had to do. His first order of business was trading the most talented homegrown player we'll ever see in our lifetime. But he also had shortcomings, the inability to pull the trigger, the Chris Sale rumors that have come out that there was a team willing to take on 90% of his contract in return for players and to not pull the trigger on that. There's multiple examples. We don't need to get into all the examples, but it's just, I think there is room for saying, yes, he was given an impossible job and he was fired for doing exactly what he was asked to do, while also saying he fell short in a lot of ways and he could have done better in the interim while he was here.
Yeah, we all know people like Chaim Bloom who are extremely analytical and think everything to the nth degree. And these are the same people that when you go out to lunch, they can't decide what they want to order. Okay, because they're trying to balance, what they think they should do and what they don't do. And I think that's the thing. Right now we've talked about it 100 times, on the podcast. It's like, he suffers from analysis paralysis. He can't bring himself to take that next step. He doesn't have the action gene in him. It's just okay. Now I have to push the button.
You can come to his defense a little bit and say, when you aren't given a blank checkbook and you are handcuffed to lead in trades and outside transactions as your primary source of player acquisition, that you need to maximize every one of those deals. And I think Chaim took that really, really seriously, and to his detriment. I think that analysis paralysis is also, I don't have a catchy phrase for the one I'm about to say. I was trying to think of one, but I think he was paralyzed by the idea of not winning every trade. I think he was obsessed with the idea of how do I maximize my return, because I'm not going to be able to just go and sign whoever, or, if I trade the farm, like there's no reality or there's no guarantee that I can replenish that system, that I'm here long enough to do that. Like when you're handcuffed, you do have to make the most of what you're given. But at the same time, it's a really tough job for a guy who also had never been the number one. So it's a lot thrust onto one dude. And there's some personal bias here too. That I'm sure you feel, Chris, that he was a great guy. That's the thing too, is people on the outside want to just say screw him and whatever. He was a really nice guy, and he was way more giving of his time than any GM needs to be. Was way more available. Was willing to just have a conversation about ball. Would just how many GMs are just on the field pregame for a game in May and just talking to reporters, without microphones, just chatting it up for, an hour pregame. But I don't want to pat him on the back all too much, but I do think it's a gray area. It's just not right or wrong in my eyes.
Yeah, Joey, Chris, both, and even George, you guys all make great points. There has to be a gray area with him, because he will always be martyred as the person that gave away Mookie Betts.
Will he though? Will that be a big part of his legacy here?
I think so, but I look at the end of it, look who, he traded Vazzy, and look who we got. Abreu was supposed to be the second guy in the trade, but he's turned out really, really well, and he could be the star of the trade. He's rebuilt our farm system with, talent, with, Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, great acquisitions there. So if he was actually given, like Dombrowski, a blank check, we could have easily had another World Series, maybe two. 2021, would have been a big year for us, I think. But like you guys said, his hands were tied to a certain degree. And when the next GM comes in, we're going to see if it's management, which a lot of us, I know I believe it's management, or was it the actual general manager? So
I think it's a combo. I think we're gonna even to the person's gonna come in, whoever he or she or they or whatever the combination is gonna be. That they're probably gonna have a little bit more resources to use when it comes from like the money aspect of it.
mhm.
They're sure as hell gonna have more players to choose from for making a move or whatever. But I don't look at like this offseason as I don't know if you can fix it in one off season. I know some people say they can, some people say they can't. I'm under the camp right now, like I'm gonna believe it when I see it, but I wouldn't hate if they did something like Texas did last off season and go and get 3 arms. Personally, I've never really been a person to get all hyped up on one guy because I know when that happens, you get disappointed and you're kind of left with that like egg on your face. But the Boston Red Sox need to make Shohei Ohtani the number one priority. And there's no other, to me, like, I don't know how you can unconvince me from that, because where I just mentioned they need to get 3 arms. Well, you will. You're going to get 2 this offseason. You need to go and get a Yamamoto and a Montgomery and get Shohei, and there's your 3rd arm for now next season. And now you can slot guys into the correct spots. Now Bayo doesn't have to be the ace right off the bat. He can just kind of continue to develop and kind of, show what he can become. Now you have some flexibility where, does Tanner Houck become expendable? I know, and look, I'm not saying trade Garrett Whitlock. I'm just using this as like examples, but like Whitlock maybe becomes expendable, or he goes into the bullpen and stays where he belongs. And, you have him with Martin and Jansen, and now you can go out and get another bullpen guy to kind of solidify all that. But the question is like, will they be able to do that? And are they going to do that? But to me, it starts with Ohtani. I think that needs to be what the Red Sox need to go back in the business of being the Red Sox again. Again, I don't think they need to do anything that needs to put them in a really, really bad spot. Shohei Ohtani fills the seats, and I think the Red Sox never want to see what they saw this season again. You know what I mean? Felger and Maz really kind of like hitting them hard with that dollar ticket nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, they made a point, and I understand a doubleheader on Tuesday, you get school and people are going to work, but on Saturday, if you can't fill that ballpark when the Yankees are there, like, what are we doing? And the Red Sox need to fix that. And you start there with Ohtani. And if you don't land them, at least show us that you were legitimately in the conversation. Enough of the interest kings. Like, I want to see the Red Sox going back to being the Red Sox. And I think for like George, you probably could, back in 2004, that off prior to that, the Manny Ramirez chase, like, were they going to sign Ramirez? Or are they going to sign Mike Mussina? Like, that's when it was like fun during the off season again. Last couple off season, we knew what we were going to get. We were connected to everybody, but you knew it was going to be the, love them, but Martin Perez was going to be the end result. You know what I mean?
And I think it's going to take a little bit, at least for me anyway. Maybe I'm speaking for people a little too much here. I think it's going to take some time to readjust what it is to be a Red Sox fan in the offseason. Because as you said, Ohtani, all the cards are aligned for them to make a push for a player like that and to spend big this offseason. But you say Ohtani, and my brain is now programmed to go, come on, man. Come on, they're not going to do that. But they absolutely are in position to do it. But it's going to take a couple of those signings for me to readjust, because every report that you see of like, oh, the Red Sox are, looking like a real contender in Ohtani, I just write off, because I'm like, I can't get excited about that, because I have no reason to believe yet that they're going to do those things. They totally can't. The thing is, this whole time they could have too. They're better set from a business standpoint to do it now, but they've always had the money to do it. There are some signs that they are more willing to right now because they're moving in a different direction as far as general management goes. Maybe I'm dumb here, but I care about this kind of stuff. The fact that they sold a percentage of Liverpool for
$200 million.
Yeah.
$200 million. That to me means something. Is $200 million anything to these guys? No. Is it an Ohtani contract? No. But it means something to me that they're liquidating assets to some extent. And I get the gears going when I hear that stuff, and I think, okay, they're funneling all their money back into the Red Sox. But I have to see it before I totally buy into it. And this is the offseason to do it. Because if they don't this offseason, if they're like, we grabbed 46-year-old Nelson Cruz. We think that he can be a power bat in the middle of this lineup. then I'm not going to Fenway Park. I'm not buying a ticket. I mean, I don't think that anyone should. And I don't know how far down the attendance charts that Fenway Park needs to fall before they do that kind of stuff. Because like you're saying, Chris, there was, games in September where people stopped coming and whatever. But up to that point, they're selling out every night. It's still Fenway. It's really when it comes down to like, okay, are they making a playoff push or not, that people stop coming. If they keep going this route, I don't really know how long it would take for people to stop showing up in June, July, August. People still come. I mean, it's a tourist attraction, and I think that they have been relying on that the past couple of years, that they're still gonna make money. They're still gonna be fine. But it's your top of the pyramid. It's your top 10% of fans, the people who really care, the people who watch 162 games, that are going to start checking out. And this move in restructuring the front office gives those people hope, like gives the 162 people hope that things will change. But that doesn't mean they have yet. They still have to actually make the change.
Well, I think your point.
Go ahead, George.
I'm sorry. I think Joey. I think your point about the fact that they sold off part of Liverpool. I think that they've gotten Liverpool was their new toy. So in their effort to Fenway Sports Group to diversify and keep growing, they kind of neglected the parent organization to a point where it's gotten this bad. Okay, and like you said, they now need to refocus. Okay, because sooner or later, and the fans they'll if you're not, I'm old enough to remember what it was like as a kid in 65 and 66 when 900 people would show up at the ballpark. Yeah, well, I am the OG. But I mean, seriously, 900 people show up at a game in September. I mean, somebody dropped a bottle of soda, and you heard it all over the ballpark. But I don't think it's not going to be that bad again. But I think that they have gotten away from it, and the fans are rightfully upset about it. And because they've been spoiled, they've gotten 4 championships in this century so far. So they're like, oh, we should be able to do this, and they're just tired of it. And if FanFest last year, if you think that they were going to be upset with John Henry last year, we'll just wait till the pitchforks come out this year. I mean,
can't wait. Cannot wait. I can't wait to go to winter weekend, because last year I sat in I didn't want to go onto like the floor level, so I went up and I sat like directly in the middle, so I can kind of get like a good view. But I can't wait for but the thing too, though, is that if they come out swinging and they add a couple of free agents that are gonna, kind of change the narrative and try to, kind of like Men in Black, hold the pen out and, make us forget about the last couple of years. It may not be as crazy as what it was last year, but last year that was awesome. That was intense.
Yeah. So let's move into our first player, end of the season player grade. We're going to start off with Brayan Bello. So, Rylie, we're going to start with you. What would you grade Brayan Bello's season?
Put me in the hot spot. Brayan Bello, I think I would give him like a solid B+. He wasn't flawless, but there were a lot of times where he did exactly what we needed him to do. He's still young. He's growing into his role. And I think he's shown like very, very good signs of reliability. He's a great pitcher all around. Yeah, I'd give him a solid B+, only because he wasn't perfect. Nobody is, but I think he still has a lot of growing to do. He's had his mistakes here and there, but I think overall he's shown a lot of potential, a lot of promise, and he has been there in times that we really needed him to step up and do well. So that's what I'd give him.
Hey, I'm right there with you with a B+, just because it was a lot of pressure early on with our pitching staff going down, where he was originally, the number 3 guy maybe, and then all of a sudden you're forced to be the number 1. It's a lot of pressure, but he was able to handle the load. get to the 7th inning, something that most of our pitching staff didn't even see, as much as him. So I'm also going to sit there and go B+. George, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on the same B+. I mean, you could see the difference in his game from when he came up at the end of the previous season. Working with Pedro seemed to help him. He's made that good next step. I think he's got a lot to think about this offseason, and he's determined. He's got that fire in his eye. So I think yeah, for B+ for sure. And you can see that he will be even better next year.
Okay. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I think B. I'm going to go B. But yeah, I was there. I got to see him pitch against, it was the Marlins, right? Yeah, it was the Marlins where he had that no-hitter and then it kind of got broken up. I thought that was the best outing that he had all season. He even took the loss on that. But you could just see how he went and transformed over the course of the season. Couldn't understand or figure out why he couldn't pitch during the day. But even down in Worcester, just seeing him going and doing like little things that the team wanted him to do to try to get better, to get back up to Boston, and how, he was really positive when he was down there, again, to try to get back up there. Quirky dude, which I like. He don't speak a lot of English, but he would try to talk to you. I just, overall thought that he really kind of grown and he matured, for in front of our eyes. I just don't want to rush it with him. You know what I mean? Like, he's the first true homegrown guy that the Red Sox have had from a pitching standpoint a really long time. So I really want to see that kind of continue to mature and kind of develop organically in front of our eyes. But he's done all the right things, and hopefully he continues to go into this offseason with that same approach. But I'm gonna go I'll go a solid B.
Okay. Joey, what about you?
I'm going to take the over here, and I'm going to go with an A-. I think that Brian Bayo was your only consistent pitcher this entire year, which is a lot to put on a kid who's 14 years old or whatever. He, from May to August, he made 20 starts, 118 innings, which is essentially Chris Sale's entire season, a couple more innings, same amount of starts, a 3.26 ERA over that time. He also showed you the kind of guy that he's going to be. Sure, there are moments of inconsistency, but in showing you who he is, he's not trying to change himself. You didn't see his strikeout rate go up as he went on. You didn't see him trying new pitches and banging his head against the wall. He is the guy that he is, and he is going to be a great 2 or 3. I just hope that next year that he's not put in a position where he's, a top 2 arm. I think for what you asked of him this year, he over-delivered. And yeah, like the final numbers aren't all too sexy, but I think a lot of that is the workload. And also the like I said, the position that he has put in the rotation that didn't exist around him.
Yeah, 157 innings pitched to end the season for him. That was, like you said, that's what we expected from Chris Sale, And, well, you put a young kid into that spot. He handled himself very, very well. Overall, I can't wait for him. I think, Joey, you're right. I think it'll be great if he could be a number 3 spot next year. Gives him time to develop, and just a little more time to work on things. So the next guy I want to sit there and throw out there is kind of a small curveball, because he kind of came on really surprisingly. Bernardino, I don't want to go through everybody, but Bernardino kind of was one of those Chaim Bloom key finds. So, Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think Bernardino, I'd probably go B+, even A-. I like when you get a guy off of, when you claim him that was DFA'd, like what is really your expectation? You know what I mean? Like it's DFA'd for a reason. 9 times out of 10, it's, they're a fringe 4A player. But he just talk about like the story that he had just to get back into baseball. But like overall, I mean, he was everything the Red Sox needed. He provided stability from the left-handed side when, at the beginning of the season, that was supposed to be Blyer, and, Blyer just couldn't get that done. So, yeah, I think Bernardino was an outstanding find, similar to when they grabbed Schreiber. I think he threw the second most innings out of a reliever. I think he threw like 55 and change, or maybe 55 right on the dot. Not terrible, considering that was the guy that you claimed off of waivers. And, went down to Worcester. When he's down in Worcester, his demeanor didn't change. When he was up in Boston, his demeanor didn't change. It was just, someone that all around quality guy. So, looking forward to him being a piece of the team next season. But I think that was one of the few really good ones that Bloom grabbed over the course of his tenure. And I'll be comfortable. I'll say A-. I'll stick with A-.
Okay. I like that. Joey, you chuckled a little bit when we were talking about Blyers, but what do you think?
I forgot about Richard Blyer. So hearing his name is just a couple of years from now, that one's going to make me laugh even more than it does right now. So here's the thing with Brandon Bernardino is when you're a reliever, it takes one bad outing to really stain people's mind. And I think that Bernardino escaped that because he was so consistent and he did fill, so many roles that he was not expected to fill. But that one blow up against the Yankees in was that September? Yes, it was. Yeah. September 14th. He had that 5-run outing against the Yankees. But in his final 22 appearances of the year, 19 of them were scoreless. 2 of them were on 1 run, and then there was that one implosion there. Chris kind of hit the nail on the head. I'm right with you. I think it's an A-. Much more than you expected. Not a guy that you should have needed to rely on. That's kind of the tail of the tape with a lot of your pitching staff. Not a guy that you should have had to rely on, but a guy who, when his number was called, showed up. I think an A- is appropriate for Brennan Bernardino.
Okay. Rylie.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with A-. You didn't really expect him to do much. Of course, you didn't expect him to be a complete blowout because we signed him. But I don't know. I don't think I had like much hope in him necessarily either, especially considering like the rest of the pitching staff. I never have hope for them. But I think he was really like he was a good hidden gem. I think he came up. He did exactly what we needed him to do. Nobody really expected him to do that. He kind of defied his own expectations in that way, and I think he was just probably one of the more reliable relievers that we had, which was extremely important because we didn't really have any reliable relievers or pitchers. I mean, we had some here and there, but he definitely helped the cause, which I think was, of course, one of the most important things with particularly the 2023 Red Sox. So I think solid A- is what I'd give him too.
And George.
I'm a little tougher grader. I'm giving him a B+. On a staff of disappointments, he did well. Unlikely find, and did a lot of good things for the Sox, kind of in a Swiss Army knife role. But yeah, for me, I give him a B+. Got more out of him than we expected. He is what he is, and he did well. He's kind of like what Schreiber was for us last year. The unexpected find, and kind of resurrected his career here.
I'm gonna sit there and go with A+. Not A+, A-. Just because he was that guy that was probably second, in my opinion, to Martin, where you could count him on him like 90-95% of the time when he's relied on. So I'll take A- on that one. Next up, we're gonna go with the guy we're gonna be talking about for the next 9 years now. We're gonna go Devers. So Joey, let's start with you.
What a weird year. You're giving me the hardest one. This is a weird one because the numbers look good in totality, and there's all sorts of splits that you can pull and say, the only X amount of players have slashed these lines over this period of time. And I don't like to rely on this, but the eyeball test this year didn't instill too much hope in any Devers at bats. There was never a moment where, Sox were rolling and I said, oh, and Devers is on deck. Watch out. I just didn't feel like he posed much of a threat. And it's hard to sit here and be like, yeah, 30 homer, 100 RBI year. Yeah, it's kind of a down year for him. But it is. And I think that only speaks to how good he is and what the expectations around him really are. Oh, God, this is a hard one, man. I think because the expectations on Devers are so high, I think this is just a solid B year for him. And that's not to discredit what he did. If he had a different name on the back of his jersey and put these same numbers up, I think that this grade is a little different. But for me, I'd say this is a B year. I think these grades could be very all over the place too. I don't know where anybody else is, but I'm sticking with B.
Okay, let's go for you, Rylie.
So Devers, I agree, is an extremely tough one. Devers personally is my favorite player, so this one is always hard for me to speak on. I think I had a lot higher expectations for him going into this season, especially because of the fact that Bogarts left and he was kind of the next step up. He was right up there with Bogarts last season. He was really supposed to be I guess unofficially that leader. He was supposed to be one of the best players on the team, kind of, taking the younger players, showing them this is how you do it. And I think he did a great job of mentoring them and making them part of the team and all that. But I think he underperformed to his own standards. And that's not to say that he had a bad season necessarily, because by any means his season wasn't bad. He still put out great numbers, but compared to what he's done in the past, I think he really underperformed against his own self, which was a little disappointing. But in general, I still think he's a great player. I still think he's someone that the Red Sox need to hold on to. They need to keep. So for that, because of the fact he wasn't a blowout necessarily, I'd probably give him a solid B+, which, like Joey was saying, if it was any other player that didn't have such high expectations tied to him, he'd probably get a little bit of a higher ranking because his numbers were good. He still put out good results, but I think he was a little iffy with his defense. There were times when he just wasn't quite there at bat. I think he could have done a lot better than he did. And while he was still pretty reliable, he wasn't as reliable as he has been in the past, or as reliable really as we needed him to be. So I think B+ is probably right around where I'd give him, just given the expectations and his past history and all that with the Red Sox.
Me personally, I'll go next. I'm gonna go C+. The numbers are there, but the person that got in his way was himself. He's one of the few players I can think of, but that can throw the ball, away one play, and then come back 2 plays later, and you're like, how did he do that? So I expect a lot more from him. He's still young yet, but I'm gonna go C+ with him. So George, what about you?
I'm in a solid B category. Offensively, his numbers were fine. I wasn't totally disappointed. I think during the season, he kind of adjusted. His batting average rose significantly as the season went on. He was in the upper 230s, and he pushed it up there. He was stopping trying to put the ball over the fence every time and saying, I'm going to take what the pitcher gives me, go to the opposite field, and do the things that made him a very dangerous hitter. For me, his grade would have been a lot higher, except that, his defense was suspect. And I don't see long-term it getting any better, which, for the team is going to be a problem, given the fact that, they now have a 10-year commitment to him. And, he's not a great defensive third baseman. So now you have to, figure out, if he's your long-term DH, you have some other issues you have to deal with. And I think that's the thing. You have the good Devers, which can mash and drive in runs and things like that. But the bad Devers is, as you said, he'll put the ball in the seats, or doesn't know when to eat it, or like he loses focus at the wrong time. So, yeah, for me, solid B.
Okay, Chris, well, you're up.
Yeah, I'm kind of teetering between like where you're at with the C+, and the reason why I'm going to say that is, when you sign the deal that he signed, the expectations around the type of player that you instantly put yourself in like a stratosphere of needs to change. I think that, him not having truly someone in the lineup to protect him, like Turner was a really good surprise, but really isn't the guy to protect Rafael Devers too in the lineup. So I think like offensively, I think it was a good year, for the stats are really good, but like that's Rafael Devers and he just signed a $300 million plus deal. But defensively was a massive letdown, and to, George's point, but I think that the Red Sox need to figure out what it was. Is it just he was mentally checking out here or there? Because you really can't afford, I don't think you can afford yet to move, what's it going to be, like 27 into the DH role just yet. And you kind of have Costas over at first base. So you're kind of limited in that respect. Little things though that he did. I mean, he definitely, set himself up as a leader within the clubhouse quietly. I mean, little things like buying the guys from the Woo Sox tickets to go to the Celtics playoff games, earlier on when the season began. Like those are all little things that Devers did that I thought was kind of cool. He didn't have to go ahead and do that. But I'd like to see this time next year, if the Red Sox go out and add somebody to put around him as to what his numbers might look like offensively versus having just to be the actual guy. But I just think that defensively, too many mistakes too often throughout the course of the season, where it was almost, to me, it was like focus. He just wasn't focused.
Yeah. One thing I did love when I heard about Devers, I think it was earlier this week, how he wants to step up and go down to the minors and help and work with a lot of the minor league Latino people. So I love how he's stepping up, in that aspect, but it's the glove that really, really bothers me. If for someone we're paying that much to, that's unexcusable. So DC, can we get your grade on Devers?
I'm going to keep this somewhat short just because I actually have some quiet in the back. I'm in between George and where you're at. I'd say a B-. Obviously, the numbers could be a little bit better offensively, but the defensive, miscues kind of bring that down, especially if you're spending that much money, on a guy like that. I agree. You got to figure it out as far as defensive wise. You can't move a guy that young into DH. Kind of have a couple blockages there, but I go B-. And sorry I was late. Thanks for coming on, guys.
So, hey, next up, we're going to go a little wishy-washy here. Let's go Alex Verdugo. So, Chris, let's start with you.
He started out really strong, started out hot, and then he got benched twice. I like the fact that he wasn't trying to be a home run hitter. I like the fact that I think if Verdugo can just focus on being a doubles guy and just kind of pepper in like the wall and put it into the gap, I think that's the game that he should play. Defensively, he was outstanding. Should be a candidate to win a Gold Glove. I like Verdugo personally, but I think that he is one of the most expendable guys on the team. And I think Wilyer Abreu could, adequately do exactly what he did next season. But grade wise, he was just so up and down all season that I am going to give him a very generous C+. And that's really only because of the fact that defensively he was strong for this team. He did go, he did lead off. I hate him in the middle of the lineup. He's no place being there. I think if the Red Sox had a team that was vying for like the postseason, Alex Verdugo batting 7th is just the absolute perfect spot for him. I'm not going to be upset if he comes back though next year. I just don't think he comes back to the Red Sox next season. But for this year, he started out so strong, and then the wheels just came right off. And I'm saying like a generous C+, because you could argue and say why that he was even a C- player, but I'll go C+.
George?
Yeah, Chris, I'm with you. A C+. AC pushed every button he could to get him to perform at a top level. Okay. And, when he was on fire, he was on fire. But at the same time, he's got a little bit of head case in him and doesn't have the internal motivation to keep going, on a 162 game basis. Defensively, yeah, he should should be in the running for a Gold Glove. Absolutely. But yeah, I'm with you. Generous C+, because there were too many other instances where, his game was like, what? But yeah, I'm right with you there.
Rylie?
Yeah, I'm a little indifferent on Alex Verdugo. I have some mixed feelings about him. I think his defense is honestly at times really insane. Like, it's really good. He's made some great plays. I think his offense, it's not bad, but it's, it's just like, it's nothing special, I would say. I think he's in a really tough spot in particular. He kind of in the middle of the season, toward the end of the season, left a sour taste in management's mouths with the way he was acting and just presenting himself. And ultimately, that's why he got benched. And then you look at the outfield as a whole, who they have. They just pulled up Sadam Rafaela. They have Jaron Duran. They have Masataka Yoshida. They have Adam Duvall. They have all these crazy players that are extremely good. I think he might be a little, I don't want to say too confident, but for lack of better terms, I think he might be too confident in his role with the Red Sox. I think they have a really good pool of outfielders that they can pull from. And if they decide they don't need him, he's probably going to the chopping block a lot quicker than some of the infielders are. I think he's not really in a safe spot, secure role in the team. Because he's just, he's already kind of being monitored by the team. Like, do we need him? Do we not need him? He has all these outfielders that are doing extremely well. And I do agree that he could definitely be a Gold Glove contender. He's done some really insane defensive plays, but I don't think that alone is necessarily enough to keep him on the team. I think he really needs to kind of clean up himself, his own presentation, just kind of do a little bit more to really like prove his spot on the team, because I think he belongs on the team if he can pull himself together. So for that, I'd probably give him a B- just because he's been pretty questionable, but he's a pretty solid player. I think he just needs to prove himself. And the fact that he didn't really appear to be trying to prove himself all that much, he didn't really seem to take it all too seriously, I think would kind of put him at a B- for me.
Okay. DC, what about you?
Talking about Verdugo, right?
Yep.
This was a tough one. Obviously, you know how I feel or felt about Verdugo coming into the season. He turned me around a little bit the first month. I thought I was turning the corner with him, and then just seeing the two benchings throughout the season. Great defense, but like Raleigh said, I just don't really like his presentation of himself. That's not like a personal dig or anything. I just feel like sometimes he just seems lackadaisical. And then he kind of tapered off the second half of the year. The numbers that he has, we definitely need more. 13 home runs, 54, 55 RBIs, 264. Just need a little bit more out of him. And I mean, admittedly, so I think my, I don't know if disdain's the right word, but is the fact that he came over in the way he did. Obviously, the Mookie Betts trade, I'm not going to get into that. I'm over that. But I think subconsciously, I think, I expect a lot more out of him, maybe unfairly, but I'm going to go a C+ on him, based off his great defense. But I think we need a lot more offensively from him.
Okay, Joey.
All right. Unfortunately, this is going to be my last one because I got to head out of here. But I will leave you guys on this. I'm hearing generous C's. I'm hearing generous C+. I'm going to give a conservative B+ to Alex Verdugo. I think given who he is, like you guys have mentioned, how he got here and the situation that he is in, this is a guy who in June, we were all arguing should have been an all-star. And obviously his first half is a lot harder than his second half. And it's not the first time that's happened to him. The relationship that he has with Alex Cora is very public, and it is a unique one. Nobody else on the team gets aired out like that. Nobody else on the team gets publicly benched like that. I think that it is safe to say that there is some personal stuff there that he battles through and that he plays through. He also plays in the same position as a one Mr. Mookie Betts that he was directly traded for, and does not let that weigh on him, or at least outwardly, and has overcome a lot of the conversation. I very rarely see people say, oh, this is the guy we got from Mookie Betts, because nobody compares him. He's an entirely different player. He's not the entire trade package also, but he's overcome those narratives. I think when he's going. And I think the things that he's had to go through, I mean, he's also been on the bereavement list this year. He's gone through a lot of things and still played really solidly the entire year. Did the last 3-4 weeks slow him down and make his numbers look bad? Yes. But it's hard to play for nothing. Kenley Jansen, a long veteran, a champion, said the exact same thing. It is hard to get out there and play when there's nothing on the line. And I think that's hard for Alex Verdugo to do as well. It's just a little more apparent when you're swinging a bat rather than coming in and closing a game. I hope this is not the end of Alex Verdugo. It probably is, though. I don't know if he ever really got a fair shake here, given all of the circumstances around him. He's a guy I've always pulled for. And I hope that if he does go somewhere else, he's put in a position where he can thrive. And man, it stinks that this is the way this has gone, because he really could have been a long-term fan favorite. I don't think that the team wants to pay him is the other thing. I think keeping him around for next year is kind of an exercise in futility, because they're just going to have him for a year and get nothing in return for him, remove him at the deadline and get very little for 60 days of Alex Verdugo. Because I really don't believe the team thinks that he's a long-term piece. I hope he ends up somewhere where he can be that guy. You also, as Rylie mentioned, you got so many outfield pieces, it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense, but I'm sending him out with some laurels. And I think that giving him a B+ on the way out of here is my way of saying thanks for everything, on top of what was a pretty good year, a year that should have seen him in Seattle. It stinks that this is the way this has gone, but I've loved Alex Verdugo. And like I said, this has got to be my last one. I got to head out of here, guys, but thank you very much for having me on. And
Thanks for coming on,
Tristan Cassis is an
Joey.
A+. Once you guys get there, Tristan Cassis is an A+. What a talent we have stumbled upon. My favorite player in God knows how long. So thank you all very much, and go Sox. We'll talk again.
Hey, thanks a lot, Joey. Take care.
All right, you as well.
So, man, let's go to a speed round. I'm gonna name a player. We're just gonna go around real quick, because there's some people I want to get to, but I don't want to go through everybody. So let's start with Yoshida. George?
B.
Rylie?
B+.
Chris?
I'll go B-.
DC?
I'll go B- as well.
And I will go a B. So let's go Winkowski. George,
C plus.
Rylie,
Yeah, C plus.
Chris,
I'm gonna go B.
DC.
B minus.
And I will go B plus, just because what role he was, filled into. Let's go Whitlock. George,
C minus.
Rylie,
Probably B minus.
Chris,
Yeah, I'm gonna be in the C category. I'll just go straight C.
DC.
I'll follow that as well. I'll go C.
That makes three of us. C. Let's make it an easy one. Justin Turner. George,
A plus.
Rylie,
A.
Chris,
Yeah, he's an A.
DC,
A.
and I'm going to follow A plus just because that man, you can't keep him off the field at all. Connor Wong. George,
C plus.
okay. Rylie,
Say B minus.
Chris,
B minus is B minus.
DC.
B minus. I swear I'm not just taking their answers.
I'll go C plus. So, Pavetta. George,
B.
Rylie,
Yeah, I'd go B.
Chris,
If you would have asked me that before the season started, I would give him a strong C minus because I was not a Nick Pavetta guy. But without him, he's a B. He's a B for me.
DC.
B minus.
I'll go B minus myself also. Let's go Paxton. George,
B.
Rylie,
B.
Chris,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with a B.
DC.
Let's go B minus.
I'll say B plus because I didn't expect him to even pitch nowhere near what he did this year. Let's go with another easy one. Let's go Martin. DC, let's start with you because that's your boy.
I'm gonna go A plus.
Chris,
He was their probably best player outside of Turner. Yeah, I don't do A pluses. I'm gonna go A.
okay. Rylie,
I'm also going to go with A.
George,
A.
A for myself too. Chris Sale. George,
C minus.
Rylie,
C.
Chris,
D plus.
D plus. Okay. DC,
C minus.
and I'll take C minus also. Touch 'em all, Duvall. George,
B. Solid.
Rylie,
This is a tricky one. I'd say B plus just given his circumstances and the injury.
Chris,
I'm gonna go C plus only because he got injured and very streaky. We got to see how streaky that he actually was.
DC.
I'm gonna go B minus for Duvall.
I'll go C plus with the ball. Cutter Crawford. DC.
I'm gonna go B minus.
Chris,
Yeah, B minus.
Rylie,
I think B minus.
George.
B minus.
And since I said that he was going to have the most wins on the season, I'll take a B minus.
I remember that. I'm not gonna lie. When you said that, I thought you were crazy, but he wasn't too far behind.
Yeah. Let's go Tristan Casas. George,
B plus.
Rylie,
A-. Probably would have been a lot lower at the beginning of the season, but end of the season, I just was so drawn to how good he was doing.
Chris?
A-, and I love the fact that he shut up so many people over the course of the season.
Yes. DC?
A-.
I will follow suit with A-. Let's see. I'm missing somebody. Kenley Jansen. I almost forgot about him. DC?
I go A+, or I might not A-. Sorry.
A-. Chris?
Yeah, Dodger fans, when they signed him, were like, he's frustrating. You're going to know why. And there were times this season you knew why. So I'm going to go B+.
Okay. Rylie?
I'll have to throw him an A-.
George?
I'm with Chris, B+.
Yeah, me too. I will follow B+. And let's go Trevor Story. George?
Even though he made it back, I got to give him an incomplete.
Okay. Rylie?
Yeah, I think he's a little tough to grade. I mean, I would probably give him like a C+. He was really hyped up and didn't really do much, but I also worked his first game with the Sea Dogs and he hit a home run, so I know that wasn't in the majors, but it still gives him a little extra bonus points for me.
Rylie, you will be muted the rest of the podcast because DC and I were so hoping that he would have been at the Woo Sox instead of getting sent down to Portland, but we got to go to the Woo Sox Rail Riders game, and they sent him to Portland instead of there.
Yeah,
So
I heard ahead of
disappointed.
time that he was going to come to Portland.
Chris, what about you?
Yeah, it's so hard to grade him because I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to grade him offensively and defensively. I'm not going to give him a full grade. I'm going to cheat the system. Offensively, he's a massive D-. He was a massive disappointment, and I understand that he just did not get enough of the reps to get him ready. Defensively, if we had that all season long, probably a little bit of a different conversation in regards to record-wise and some other things that we've gotten to see. He probably deserves a legitimate A when it comes to defense, because there's a case to be made with a lot of the statistics, and I'm not a big statistics nerd when it comes to all that advanced crap, but there is a case to be made for him. So I'm going to say offensively a D-, but defensively an A.
DC?
Yeah, that one's tough because of small sample size and obviously the circumstances, but I'll go C.
And me, I will go B, just because he almost made me forget about Kike playing shortstop the whole entire first half of the season. So that there was good enough for me, seeing someone actually be able to throw it to first base and make it there. So we're going to go around one time. Anybody who we had not named that you want to bring up now. George?
Cedane Rafaela. I think the future is extremely bright with him. I mean, they moved him around a little bit. He played center, he played short. They tried him in second base. For the small sample size we got, I give him a strong B+. I mean, the kid has, you can see the upside the kid has, and yeah, he's the one player I'd add on to grade.
Okay, Rylie, who's your one player we haven't mentioned?
So I don't have a player in particular, but I do have a moment that I would like to bring up. Rafael Devers as a shortstop. I don't have a grade for that, but that was just hilarious. I have to give him an A actually for that, because when does Rafi play shortstop? He doesn't.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jaron Duran B+. Duran, considering last year and even the year before, just a lot of disappointment. I don't want to bring up the two games from last year. I think we know which ones I'm referring to, but just the fact that he came into spring training, he looked like a different player physically. He was going the opposite way a ton. Went to go with Team Mexico. Seemed like he was allowing himself to kind of come out as a person and as an individual versus, what we got to see. And then when he got his opportunity to come up to Boston when Duvall went down, there was like the epitome of, as when you have a prospect that needs to go ahead and just kind of like grab the bull by the horns and run with it. He did that. Unfortunately, it sucked that he ended up getting, hurt, but I'm looking forward to what Duran looks like next year. Now, again, too, is he back? You know what I mean? Is he dangled in a move and they, bring back a starting pitcher? That's a different conversation. But if he is back, he only just makes that team better and gives them a legitimate, piece in the lineup. I think just from an outfield standpoint, it's not the greatest outfielder. He's not the greatest center fielder. Yeah, I think Maserati wrote something today to kind of, really talked about where he was graded really low amongst center fielders. He's probably better suited in the corner outfield spot and left, but I thought he had a really, really good season. I liked what we got to see on the field. I think off the field too. So sucked that he got hurt because I would like to see in the last, 2 months of what he would look like. So,
yeah. And my guy, I would sit there and because I forgot about him, Tanner Houck, B-. I liked what he was able to do for us when he was healthy. I still like him in the bullpen or maybe a number 5 starter. So we got to figure out next year, where he could fit in the rotation. If not, I do like Cutter ahead of him though. So, but I also love how the last game of the season, Halkamania ran wild there in Baltimore, and they picked up the W. So he finished the season strong. So, but guys, I want to thank everybody for coming on. Rylie, let everybody know where they can meet you at. Read your articles and just talk baseball with you.
Yeah, I'm most active on Twitter, which my handle is RylieS_14. Probably the best way to keep up with my work and follow me, chat with me.
Chris, you're up.
Yeah, you can find me. It's at Chris Henrique. You can also, follow us at Beyond the Monster. We have a lot of stuff going on this off season. New podcast. I'll plug it for Ed and Andrew. To the show we go. They've had. I think they just recorded their 5th episode today with Rob Bradford. It should be out on Monday. And pretty excited for a lot of the guys that are going to be coming on the show. So definitely check that out. No exact Twitter handle for them in regards to that show. You can just follow it through all of our socials. We're going to push it that way.
Okay. And I listened to the first episode and I loved it. So, George, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter, at Thurland Systems, an ode to my old consulting gig, and my Substack, Pundits of the Pesky Poll. You can read my every day. I do a Sunday column, and then I fill in, when I feel the need to express myself, and find me on here when I appear.
Last but not least, my man DC.
Right, you can just check out the Pesky Podcast Twitter. My name's on there if you want to go to mine, but that's more important, I think. Chris and Rylie, thanks for coming on. Sorry for my tardiness. Life was a little crazy this morning. But yeah, good to see you guys. Appreciate coming on.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So, guys, like always, anywhere you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, we're there. You can check us out, download our podcast. Head on over to our website, get yourself some merchandise. We're working with Christopher Troy now. We got CT. Get your Roman Empire t-shirt because the Roman Empire, the Legion is coming. We got the one I'm wearing right now. This is our Fulton City You know, just check out our merchandise. So, guys, for Riley, for Chris, George, DC, and myself, thanks for checking out the Pesky Podcast.